Hello, world. Welcome to another edition of Webinar Wednesdays. I am pleased to present to you all Neil Thompson. Neil Thompson had a master's of biomedical engineering from Columbia University. That's in New York City. And he has also founded a fantastic podcast called Teach The Geek. Welcome, Neil. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me, Dr. Thompson.
My pleasure. So right now you're in California, 3 hours difference between us, but it sounds like despite those differences, wherever you are on this planet, we have similar goals and missions, and that's to really educate the general public and the next generation of leaders to make a substantial difference in this world. So I'm thrilled to have this conversation with you. You are the very first biomedical engineer that I've been able to have on this program, and I think that a lot of people will be able to learn from you. So please, Neil, let me know and let us all know, what's your background? What is your story?
I used to lie about my story because I thought it wasn't all that interesting. But as I got older, I just accepted the story for what it is. So now I tell the truth about it. When I was in high school, I didn't know really what I wanted to do when I was done high school. But my father said that I should study engineering. And so I studied engineering. And I went into materials engineering at first. That was my undergraduate degree. And then he said, do a master's in engineering. And I said, okay. So I did a master's in engineering, firstly at Clemson University in South Carolina in bioengineering. And then he said, do a PhD in engineering. And I said, okay. And so I started a PhD in biomedical engineering at Columbia. But after the first year, so I'm about 25 years old at this point, I realized that I didn't want to do a PhD. I didn't want to be in school any longer. And at some point, you have to start living your life for yourself and not for what your parents want you to do. I mean, I was a lot different being a 25-year-old than I was at 18, just going into college. I was way more, I guess, obedient at 18 than I was at 25. So I left with a master's from Columbia, and then I started off on my journey in working. It took me about 7 months after leaving the program to find my first job, and it was as a research associate at a startup just outside of Boston. I did that for about 2 years, after which I moved to California and took a job as a product development engineer at a spinal implant company just outside of San Diego. I did that for about 4 years. The boss that I had at that job, he started his own company. And so I joined him at that company. That is a startup. I was employee number 3, and I was there for about maybe 3-4 years, something like that. And then I left that job and I took a job as a contractor at another spinal implant company, another startup. And I was there actually, I was only there 5 months. It was supposed to be for a year. And I remember getting called into the CEO's office near the end of the day. And I thought I was being called in because he wanted to tell me what a great job I was doing. That really wasn't the reason for the meeting. He was in there, the COO was in there, and then my boss was in there. And they were telling me that I would no longer be needed because they wanted to bring in somebody with sales and marketing experience as opposed to having another product development person there. And so that was back in 2015. And I remember leaving the office that day, never wanting to be in that position ever again. And so I've since then, so 6 years ago now, I've really been keen on building something for myself. So I can't be fired. I would never fire myself.
Yeah. Wow. What an adventure. So it just sounds like you were the newest hire and they wanted to go with a different vision. So then it had nothing to do with you and the quality. They just changed the vision on you, which is traumatizing. But it sounds like from that experience, it made you prioritize your goals and led you to this fantastic work that you're doing.
That's
Um,
it.
that's incredible. I think it takes a lot of courage to also finish up or transition when you're in school and say, you know what, I'm not feeling this PhD. I'm not really so pleased with it. Let's do the master's and get life going. So I think that takes a lot of courage, and I'm really happy that you shared the story because I'm sure a lot of listeners could be in this position. Um, so it's similar to what you said, at some point you need to think what makes you happy rather than other people.
That's it. I mean, I started, as I mentioned, I started engineering because my father said I should. Who knows what I would have done if just left to my own devices. Luckily, getting the engineering degree isn't something that I regret, but perhaps if it was up to me, I likely would have stopped after the master's from Clemson and started looking for a job then. But
Mm.
I listened to my father and he said, go do a PhD. But as I said, I never really wanted to do a PhD. And at some point, you gotta start living life for yourself and not for the wants of other people. I'm sure my father, this happened back in 2005. He's still probably upset that I left that PhD program.
Well, it sounds like you were following your dreams and you identified that that wasn't what you wanted and you didn't want to go into academia, or uh, that type of route. And that's totally fair and fine. And I'm really happy that you did what you did. So, okay, for the people who are not engineers, can you explain? This sounds like there's bioengineering, there's civil engineering, there's materials engineering, there's software engineering. Can you explain to us where biomedical fits in? Why did you want to go that route versus any of the other engineering routes?
Well, I mean, based on what I've said before, you think I picked biomedical engineering? I mean, everything up until that point was my father saying do this. So I did materials engineering because he said to do that. I did biomedical engineering because he said to do that. I looking back on it, I'm not exactly sure why he picked biomedical. I guess he thought that the intersection of engineering and medicine would be something that would be, I guess, stable for the foreseeable future. And he was actually right about that. So even picking biomedical wasn't a bad decision. I mean, I eventually worked in medical devices, and many people that work in medical devices have backgrounds in biomedical engineering. So it actually was a good fit. And I don't regret working in medical devices. That actually was a lot of fun.
Right. I imagine that it was pretty um I don't want to say satisfactory. It was very appealing. It was very nice to see that people could benefit from what you are bringing to the table. Now, are you helping design or are you helping? What was your process in the spinal implantations?
Yeah, so I was a product development engineer in the orthobiologics group. So for those of you that don't know, let's just say you have a bulging disc, an orthopedic surgeon will remove it and then he'll replace it with an implant. And that implant can be made out of metal, it can be made out of ceramic, but it could also be made out of human cadaver bone. And I worked in the group that developed and designed those implants, the ones made out of cadaver bone. So if you are an organ donor, your bones could be used to make implants for other people.
Wow. Now, with that project, with that company, did you have a greater appreciation for donations, like organ donations?
I mean, I never really thought of it that way, but I suppose so. I mean, we're just working in that industry, or at least that part of the business. When you donate these bones, they go to a tissue bank, and that's actually where the not the design, but the manufacturing of the implants happens. So I used to have to go to these tissue banks periodically to just witness and just look at their process of manufacturing these implants. You you'll never forget the smell of bone being cut. It's a very distinct smell, and also the fat that comes with bone. You never realize how fatty bone is until
Mhm.
you actually see it and have to get rid of all that fat. It's goopy and it's pretty gross. It always just smells really bad. I don't wish that upon my worst enemy.
Yeah, it's funny. You see movies where there are these types of images, right? But you can never imagine the smell that would accompany that. Who knows? Maybe in 20 years, movies will have, so many other dimensions that we'll be able to experience. Who knows? Um, but moving on, when it comes to your career today with Teach the Geek, and that's how we met. You interviewed me on this, and then when I heard that you were a biomedical engineer, I'm like, ooh, I want to interview you here with One Health Lessons. So could you enlighten the viewers? What is Teach the Geek podcast? Teach the Geek. I'm a big fan of right now, so I want other people to know about it.
Sure. Well, the idea of Teach the Geek was born from the second job that I took, the job that I came out to California to do, working in product development at the spinal implant company. When I first took the job, I thought I was just going to be doing product development, which was doing work in the lab, doing a lot of research, doing a lot of just development work. And that was the case for the first few months. But then my boss called me into his office and said that I was going to be a project lead. And for those of you all that don't know what that means, well, the company that I worked at was too cheap to hire project managers. So they pushed on that responsibility to the product development engineers. And one of those responsibilities was giving presentations in front of senior management every month on project progress. So we're talking the CEO, the VP of R&D, VP of marketing, basically all the people that got corner offices. I had to give presentations in front of them every month. And those presentations, at least at first, were absolutely horrendous. I did not know it was possible to sweat that profusely out of one's body. It was pretty gross, actually. But I got a lot better at it over time. And I noticed a lot of the other engineers weren't all that much better at presenting in front of these people as I was. And I think looking back on it, the issue that a lot of us had is we have all this technical expertise, but we're not the best at putting it in such a way that these decision makers can understand, many of whom don't have that technical background. And that's something that's a lesson I certainly learned as I went along. Although I was a bit hard headed with it. I didn't learn it after the first time I gave a presentation, or the second, or third, or fourth. I mean, I eventually learned the lesson after my project got canceled. And I thought, well, now I'm going to be out of a job. Luckily, that wasn't the case. But that certainly was the wake up call that I needed to get better at presenting in front of people, specifically decision makers. So that's where the idea of Teach the Geek came from. It wasn't for at least another couple of years that I actually put it all together, and I built a course based on my own struggles and getting better at public speaking. And I called the course Teach the Geeks to Speak. And then earlier this year, or just actually last month, I decided that a one-off course wasn't enough and that I wanted to offer more ongoing support. So I developed a membership based around the course called the Teach the Geek to Speak Society. So in addition to getting the course, you also get access to an online community and also monthly group calls. So that's basically what Teach the Geek is currently. At some point, I will develop other resources that could be of benefit to those in the science and engineering fields. The type of things that perhaps you don't learn in school, but are really important in the workplace. So the first thing was public speaking, but I might do something on networking, on interviewing, on negotiating, just those other skills that really helps to build a career.
It makes sense now why you asked me in your podcast if I get nervous for public speaking opportunities and events. If the viewers want to know the answer to that, then check out Teach the Geek and you will hear the answer. Well, I think that's great. And so, who is your target audience for Teach the Geek?
The target audience is people like me. So people that are engineers, scientists, those that work in the STEM fields, that see the benefit of getting better at public speaking, specifically to communicate with non-technical people. Because you can have the best ideas in the company, but if you're not able to convince a decision maker to make it happen, then it'll just stay an idea. And not only that, but if you're not really good at advocating for yourself, then oftentimes you'll be that engineer or scientist sitting in his or her cubicle stewing because somebody else got the promotion and pay raise that you wanted, but you didn't get it because you didn't put in the work and you weren't really good at talking to the people that could make those kind of decisions for you.
It totally makes sense. So bringing the One Health component in, you're an engineer. It sounds like starting off maybe in materials or using material engineering knowledge to apply to the biomedical sciences. Is that the best way to describe? Because you were working with bones, cadavers, you understand how those are built.
Yeah,
Yeah, okay.
that's right.
So keeping that going a little bit further and bringing in the One Health approach even more, the One Health approach for the benefit of everybody is that teamwork, right, between people of different strengths, abilities, disciplines, and we work together towards a common goal, to solve a common problem. So where can biomedical professionals, biomedical engineers fit into the puzzle of, say, handling this pandemic or something else that's a challenging global health concern?
Well, I mean, the work that we did at the spinal company was interesting work in the sense of helping people with their medical issues. When it comes to COVID specifically, I guess the vaccine development, I'm not sure is anything that biomedical engineers are directly uh, involved with, although I would think that their background could be of use in terms of maybe developing or what's the best way to say this, the best materials perhaps to use to deliver these vaccines. So maybe that's the case. Although I mean I don't have any background in that, but off the top of my head, I think that could be a potential way that some of the biomedical background could be of use, at least to COVID.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Yeah, I'm sure engineers are involved in the vaccine process, the development process. Um, so if viewers you're interested, check it out, look it up, explore what can we get more people at the table contributing to One Health conversations. I think that's wonderful. So just to wrap up, because the target audience for this is really professional and aspiring One Health professionals. So, and One Health advocates. So, what tips do you have for people who are, say, in their schooling, who's doing their undergrad or graduate or even postdoc degrees? What advice do you have for the next generation of leaders?
Well, I mean, you have, as I mentioned earlier, you can have all the technical expertise in the world, but if you're not good at communicating it with those that have the authority to make decisions, then those ideas that you have will be for nothing. So really, really practice your ability to communicate with people and search for opportunities to do so. I wish that was something that I had taken more into account when I first started out. That first job that I had as a research associate didn't really have any speaking responsibilities at all. And at least at the time, that wasn't something that I was all that upset about. It was really that second job where it was thrust upon me to be this project lead. It really forced me to improve on those skills, and I'll forever be grateful for that.
It's wonderful. Yep. So everybody look for those opportunities, challenge yourself. We can only be as strong as what the challenges that present themselves to us. So challenge yourself in order to get better. Better for science communication and better for science as a whole and engineering as a whole. Thank you so much, Neil, for joining us today. It's been an absolute pleasure, and I'm sure a lot of people have learned a bunch from you.
Wonderful. Thank you for having me.
My pleasure. Onwards and upwards, everybody. Take care. See you next time.